To just introduce, for those that don't know, my name is Bernadette Farrar. I'm the president of the Van Nest Alliance. To my right is John Messenger, the treasurer. To my left is Charlene Jackson Mendez, which is the vice president. And to her left is Bob Nolan, our senior advisor. And to his left is Marian Manfredi, our secretary. And to her left is Marie Santillana, which is our sergeant of arms. And welcome everybody to come here today. This was, we usually don't have our meetings in summer, but this was a special meeting called to inform the community of what information was brought to light and the changes for the 500-508 development on Van Nest Avenue. And going to bring that information to those that were not there at the town hall. After that, we're going to have a discussion. After that, we are going to, the community will vote. We also have a developer here, Jonathan Sachs, if you want to stand up, say hello, everybody. And if there are any additional questions that need to be answered by Mr. Sachs, then we can have him here also. He was good enough to bring a blow-up of the images. Somebody took my other image. So I'm glad you brought those because I lost one of them. I'd like to sort of start because I know that there will be probably a lot of discussion. So what was brought at the town hall meeting, there was a request beforehand that there was an overall opposition to the height of the development, because it was, which is the first picture here, and even though that probably looks a lot more aesthetically nicer, on top of that was going to be a water tower and the mechanical box built for the elevator, which would have brought the height of that even higher. So request was put in to basically bring it down, and the developer basically said, let me look into it and see what I can do. But with that, we had more questions, which is why we had the town hall meeting. Okay. Some of the questions that were asked was how high was the building and how less was the building, the second building. It was 85 feet, which is this building, and the developer brought it down with the community's concerns to 65 feet. So now the height above the sidewalk level, if I'm correct, is 65 feet, or is that total? Is it total from bottom to top or above?
That's the highest point of grade.
It's the highest point, okay. The other question was, are the apartments going to be co-ops or condominiums? The answer was condominiums, okay. Another question that was asked, which is an extremely important question, was, well, the people who buy this, are they going to be allowed to sublease? And if they are, what are going to be the terms of the sublease? And that's a very big concern in the community. At this point, it's a question mark because it still has to go into post-development and it has to be with the Attorney General's approval. So that is a very big concern because it's something that's in a very fuzzy crystal ball at this point. And the impact could have kind of a negative impact on the community if basically it becomes an investor's delight. Okay, if the actual terms are very lax, and that we don't know. The other question was how many apartments it is going to be, even with this shorter building. It's still going to be the same, which is 47 apartments. They are going to be for sale, not rental, which is a plus. It's not going to be studios. There's going to be 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, approximately 7 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Sorry,
2 and 3
bedroom apartments.
Right. So there's 7. Oh, 1 and 2. Oh, 2 and 3.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
So where's the start from the top?
Okay. There's going to be 47 apartments for sale, 2 and 3 bedrooms. There's going to be 7 3-bedroom, 2-baths. It's going to be 17 2-bedroom, 2-baths, and there's going to be 6 1-bedroom, 1-bath. Am I correct? Yeah. And the square footage of each, we didn't get that specific, but they're going to work obviously within the perimeters. Another important question that was asked was the sale, if the apartments do not sell, if they do not go as planned, which we know things don't always go as planned, what would be Plan B, Plan C, Plan D, which is concerns of the community. For example, will it become Section 8 building? Will it become supportive housing? Will it become rentals? So that basically one of the questions that was answered was that it would never become a Section 8 because that would not be financially that would not work. It wouldn't be working within your plan. So, so right now the other issue is that for these 47 apartments, there is going to be 24 parking spaces allotted, which of course is a little bit more than the percentage of what the developer has to even give, but to the congestion of the community itself, it's still going to be a lot of cars being parked on the street. So that is a concern. So the parking is a real concern, the amount of people is a real concern, and of course the subletting, etc. So I don't know, I think that was a very good overall of the questions that were answered. So did you want to add anything, Charlene?
I want to preface my comments by saying we're just trying to find out how we can best proceed, because we know as a developer we have rights and we respect that. But we are here sort of as advocates for the entire community. So we have to respond to our constituents. And so when we've met before, I know you've kind of felt that the changes that will be brought about will be inconsequential. And you mentioned that word, I think, at least 2 times when we had the town hall. But when I look at the changes and study the traffic study, whenever you bring that amount of people into a residential community that's small and closed off on one side, the impact cannot be inconsequential. In addition to the concerns that Bernadette has brought up, I guess right now, and you correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not an expert, the R5 zoning requires you to have, for whatever number of units you have, 85% of them have to have parking spaces. But what you're saying is you want the development to be considered an R8 so that you only have to have 40% of the units having parking spaces. And so that remains a tremendous concern, because when I looked at the traffic study, you use percentages in terms of something called LOS to say that they won't have any impact. But when you look at the absolute number of cars that will be on the road during peak hours, if you live here, you know that that's not inconsequential. So for example, going from 7 cars during peak AM hours to 19 cars, for people that live here, that's a tremendous impact. So we respect your rights and we want to work with you, but we also really, really want honest information, and we want to understand the impact on our community and how to best mitigate it. Because right now this is a plan. You have as of rights, if I'm correct, as an R5 development, not an R8 development. So we just really want to make sure that we do things in a way that's fair for everyone.
Would you like me to respond?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
If we do the R5 development, and we were to build what would have been an as-of
Excuse me, can everybody hear him? Perhaps you
No.
can stand up, that'd be helpful.
If we were to build what was as of right, we would actually be eliminating parking spaces. What you would have is what you have in the other houses, where we would end up putting driveways on the street. All those driveways now take up all of the parking that would be essentially all of Adams, from Van Nest going up as long as the side of that building is, plus another set on the Van Nest side that you would be losing. What we're doing now is only having one driveway, so you drive down, so we will continue to have all the parking that's on the street. We didn't do the traffic study, just so it's clear. We hired an independent company who is recognized by New York City, and we did the traffic study by the way that the Department of Transportation would ask for a study to be done. This study, by the way, when we originally went to the DOT, said you would not do a study for submission to the DOT of a building of this size. It's not required. If you have less than 120 units, it wouldn't even be required. But we followed 100% of the guidelines of the DOT. As a matter of fact, the Assemblyman had taken our report, already has given it to the Commissioner of the Department of Transportation to use that to get leverage to help fix the problem with the traffic lights that you have at the corner of East Tremont and Van Nest, and how they are mistimed, so you can't use the buffer, and all they do is change to allow 3 cars to move up and back it all the way up to the white lane. So they're going to actually leverage that. So what we did in the study, which is now being reviewed by the Department of Transportation, which wouldn't even be looked at had it not been a valid study conducted to their requirements, is to hopefully help ameliorate the problem. And what the study found was, and its LOS is level of service. The level of service they found based on the number of cars that will be parked that are there will not in any way degrade the current transportation situation. We could all debate it. I'm not the expert, you're not the expert. We hired the experts in order to be able to do that. So that's what we did within that study.
Okay. So just to follow up, because you're really touting these persons as very competent and experts. May I ask you a question? Because I'm not an expert on directions, but in the study, it states that Van Nest Avenue runs southbound. Is that is
That's
accurate?
correct. Mm-hmm.
And that Adams Street runs east to west?
Correct. East to west, towards the train station,
What
towards the
about-
river.
how is-
That's north-south, isn't it?
Right,
No,
no.
it's not.
How can, Linda, what do you,
No, it's actually east, it runs this way, so it's east to west, which they could,
right.
it kind of got me screwed up years ago because we think of east-west and differently. We think of uptown as east and downtown
East
as
is where the
west.
sun comes up.
But
No.
what it
There's
is,
only one real true
right,
east and west.
what it
north
is
and south.
that north-south is southbound going downtown, so Van Nest is southbound. It's going crosstown, it's going downtown as far as traffic is
If you
concerned.
think about it, it's running parallel to the tracks.
Right.
Tracks
It's
are running
Running
down
the same way
south.
as Morris Park. Morris Park runs both ways, but it's
Right.
southbound.
But East Tremont screws
East-west. Right,
because then it turns at
right.
that point.
So from the side, from East Tremont to Morris Park is considered east to west.
See, I don't understand how that works. You might be right, but I've always looked at White Plains Road as
And that
heading
runs
from Van Nest Avenue towards Morris Park and heading to Pelham Park, but it's heading north. If you're going the other way towards Parkchester, you're going south.
Right.
So similarly, if you're on Adams Street, you're heading north or you're heading south. So
But-
therefore, we're a little
That's the
torn.
way DOT has it.
Northeast you're going, that's
I'm
it.
sorry, I
Excuse
can't
me.
hear Linda.
Okay.
Hold on.
One
just a second.
conversation, please, thank you.
The way DOT has it, that's the way they have. Pelham Parkway runs north and south. It
Pelham
goes up.
Parkway?
The way that if
There
it's,
is
if,
no, there's east and west, and you
Right.
can't change that. DOT
right,
can't
east,
change it.
right. Excuse me,
Galileo
one second,
determined
can I
that.
finish? Okay,
But
okay. You're right, I have it back, I have it
It's
backwards.
east-west, that's
It's east-west, but what I'm trying to say is that's the way they have the configurations. When you stop and think, the streets kind of curve, you know, but that's the way it's considered.
Okay, can we shoot back to the point as to why you're raising that?
Yes, because for me, that's very important. I do believe there's one true north, one true south, one true east, and one true west. And you're saying you got an outside independent person to do this. And if, for example, Van Nest Avenue doesn't begin at East Tremont, as the study states. Van Nest Avenue begins at Newport. That's where it begins. So when you read a study, and this is a credible professional engineer doing a study, if those things are not right, then it just makes me wonder, if the basic details are right, what else is coming from that?
All I can tell you is,
That's-
the Commissioner of the Department of Transportation has seriously reviewed the report, and the Assemblyman is working on getting him to take action. The DOT,
I will send
That
an
should
email
be
to
corrected.
Roboto, and I basically want to hear that. I want to get it, I want to get that in writing, because Roboto will give us a definite yes or no after he looks at it, the commissioner.
that's great. And I would suggest also keeping as much pressure as you possibly can. We would
I will.
love to see that intersection fixed, and it's something that we will consistently work on to make sure that we can help improve what's going on with the traffic there.
Okay.
And we don't want to see it degraded either, because from our own standpoint, it's part of the marketing of this. We don't want people moving into a place that they want to be, they're going to end up being gridlocked in.
Right, okay, okay. Yes, Linda?
If you actually look at it, the end of Van Nest Avenue is Newport.
Right.
It begins behind Clean Right. There's actually a street that goes back there, all the way to the back behind Clean Right, on the other side of Tremont. That's where Tremont Avenue begins. And it ends, or Van Nest rather, and that's where it ends, is at Newport. That's the last block on Van Nest Avenue.
Right, the 1200.
Right.
Right, the 1200. So, and the other point that you had made was also about the actual time of the study was
Yeah,
done.
it was, the study, the manual count, I guess, was done on April 5th, which school was in that day. But many of the capacity studies, it references, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but it references an April 12th date. And on April 12th, schools are out. That was the week of spring break. So you're not going to have a standard measure of what goes on in Van Nest if you're collecting a substantial part of your data on April 12th when school isn't in.
The only thing I can comment on is what they did is did the study to see whether or not it would have an impact on the level of service, whatever that service was. You already have a degraded level of service in the area. There's a C and a D level service. For some
Well,
reason, it's not
actually,
a B.
in the
So-
traffic report, sir, I'm sorry, it's all but one RB, and then there's one that is a C. And one of the tables that is referenced in the study that enables you to draw conclusions about how this will have no impact was not provided in the study, even though it's referenced. So I get what you're saying, but you have to measure at a time that's typical. If you use a baseline at a time that's not typical, you're not going to get an accurate measure. And I understand what you're saying, you hired this independent person to do this, but anybody's work can be reviewed and thought about carefully, and there are certain things that are a matter of empirical fact. And when we get feedback from the city, if we need to address that in writing, we can. Because certain things like directions are a matter of fact. They're not open to debate. And in your own report, it says that we're gonna go from 136 trips in the morning to 376 trips. So just as an ordinary person looking at, I can't see how that's not gonna impact us.
Yes.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm
you're
just
not wrong.
looking at the facts myself and thinking logically and using common sense. So
So that's why this
That's
study
why we're
was,
very,
we're
very
concerned
concerned.
about it, because as was said, and if anybody read the letter to the editor in last month, the first